This is The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolben. We're in chapter 13, Specialists. Trees can grow in many extreme environments. Can? Indeed, they must. When a seed falls from a tree, its landing site can be changed only if the wind blows or if an animal moves it. And once it has sprouted in the spring, the die is cast. From that point forward, the seedling is bound to this little piece of earth for the rest of its life and must take whatever life hands out. And for most tree youngsters, life hands out a whole series of challenges. For the place where a seed happens to end up often turns out to be highly unsuitable. It's either too dark, as it is when a light-hungry bird cherry sprouts under large beeches, or it's too bright, which is the case for beech youngsters whose delicate foliage gets scorched by the blazing sun in clearings. Marshy forest floors rot the roots of most trees, whereas in dry, sandy soil they die of thirst. Places with no nourishing soil at all, rocks or branch forks in big trees, are particularly unfortunate landing sites. And sometimes, luck doesn't last. Consider seeds that come to rest in tall stumps left when trees snap. The settled seeds grow into the little trees whose roots descend into the moldering wood. But when the first unusually dry summer rolls around, causing the last of the moisture to evaporate even from the decaying wood, the would-be winners wither and die. Many Central European tree species have similar ideas about the ideal place to live, because similar criteria for well-being holds true for most of them. They love nutrient-rich, loose, crumbly soil that is well aerated to a depth of many feet. The ground should be nice and moist, especially in the summer, but it shouldn't get too hot, and in winter, it shouldn't freeze too much. Snowfall should be moderate but sufficient that when the snow melts, it gives the soil a good soaking. Fall storms should be moderated by sheltering hills and mountain ranges. And the forest shouldn't harbor too many fungi or insects that attack the wood or bark. If trees could dream of an earthly paradise, this is what it would look like. But apart from a few small pockets, these ideal conditions are nowhere to be found. And that is a good thing for species diversity. If Central Europe were such a paradise, the competition would be won almost exclusively by beeches. They know exactly how to exploit abundance, and they suppress competitors by growing up through the crowns of other trees and then covering the losers with their upper branches. If a tree is going to survive such powerful competition, it has to come up with an alternative strategy. But deviations from the arboreal idea of paradise make life difficult for trees. And any tree that wants to find the ecological niche next to a beech must be ready to practice self-denial in one area or another. But are we really talking about ecological niches? As almost no habitat on Earth offers ideal living conditions, it's actually got more to do with the tree adapting than the niche being ideal. There are any number of difficult sites, and a tree that can get along in such places can conquer an enormous geographic range. And that's basically what the spruce has done. Spruce can gain a foothold everywhere where summers are short and winters are bitterly cold, from the far north to the mountain ranges in Central Europe near the tree line. Because the growing season in Siberia, Canada, and Scandinavia is often only a few weeks long, a beech growing there wouldn't even have a chance to open up its leaves before the end of the season. And the winter is so bitterly cold that the tree would have frostbite long before it was over. In such regions, it's the spruce that prevails. Spruce store essential oils in their needles and bark, which act like antifreeze. But that's why they don't need to jettison their green finery, but keep it wrapped around their branches in the cold season. As soon as the winter warms up in the spring, they can start photosynthesizing. Not a day is lost, and even if there are only a few weeks in which sugar and wood can be produced, the tree can still grow an inch or two every year. However, holding on to needles is also extremely risky. Snow lands on the branches and accumulates until the load is so heavy it can break the tree. The spruce employs two defense mechanisms to avoid this. First, a spruce usually grows in absolutely straight trunk. When the structure is nice and vertical, it is difficult to upset its equilibrium. Second, in summer, the branches stick out horizontally. As soon as the snow lands on them, they gradually angle down until they are layered one on top of the other like tiles on a roof. Arranged like this, they mutually support each other, and the tree, when viewed from above, presents a much skinnier profile. This means that most of the snow falls around the tree and not on it. Spruce growing in snowy areas at high altitudes or in far north also form very long, narrow crowns with short branches, and these slim the trees down even more. Holding on to needles flirts with yet another danger. Needles increase the surface area the tree presents to the wind, and therefore spruce are prone to toppling over in winter storms. The only thing that protects them is their extremely slow rate of growth. Trees hundreds of years old are often no taller than 30 feet, and statistically speaking, the danger of being blown over doesn't increase significantly until the trees are more than 80 feet tall. The natural forest in Central Europe latitudes is overwhelmingly beech, and beech trees allow very little light to reach the ground. The yew, the epitome of frugality and patience, has decided to make the most of these conditions. Because it knows it can't hold a candle to the beech in the growth department, it has decided to specialize in the forest understory. And here, with the help of the 3% of residual light the beech is allowed to filter down through their leaves, it grows. Under these conditions, it can take a whole century before a yew reaches 20 to 30 feet in sexual maturity, and a lot can happen to it in this time. Herbivores can nibble it down and set it back by decades. Or worse, a dying beech could knock it over completely. But this tough little tree has taken precautions. Right from the beginning, it puts considerably more energy into building up its root system than other species of trees. Here, it stashes away nutrients, and if misfortune strikes above ground, it grows right back without missing a beat. This often leads to the formation of multiple trunks, which may merge when the tree reaches an advanced age, giving the tree an untidy appearance. And boy, can these trees grow old. Living to be 1,000 years old or more, they easily outstrip the closest competition. And over the course of centuries, they increasingly get to bask in the sun whenever an old tree growing above them breathes its last. Despite this, yews grow no more than 65 feet tall. They are fine with this, and they don't strive to reach greater heights. The hornbeam, which though you wouldn't know it from its name, is related to the birch, tries to imitate the yew, but is not quite so frugal in its habits and needs a bit more light. But it does survive under the beeches, even though it doesn't grow into a large tree. The hornbeam rarely grows taller than 65 feet anyway, and it reaches that height only when it grows under trees that allow light through, such as oaks. Here, the hornbeam is free to develop, and as it doesn't get in the way of the larger oaks, at least there is plenty of room for both species. But often along comes a beech that pulls rank on both of them and grows up and over the oaks. The hornbeam can compete only where there is not only a great deal of shade, but also severe drought and heat. Here, beeches have to give up eventually, which means on dry south-facing slopes at least, the hornbeam stands a chance of emerging the winner. In swampy ground and standing, oxygen-depleted water, the roots of most trees don't survive, and the trees die off. You find these conditions near springs or along the banks of streams where the floodplain is regularly underwater. Say a beechnut finds itself there by mistake and sprouts. At first, it might grow into an imposing tree. But sometime during a summer thunderstorm, the tree will fall over when its rotten roots lose their footing. Spruce, pines, hornbeams, and birches run into similar problems when their roots spend some or all of their time in stagnant water. It's completely the opposite for alders. At around 100 feet, it's true that they don't grow as tall as their competitors, but they have no problem growing on unpopular swampy ground. Their secret is a system of air ducts inside their roots. These transport oxygen to the tiniest tips, a bit like divers who are connected to the surface via a breathing tube. In addition, the trees have cork cells in the lower parts of their trunks, which allow air to enter. It is only when the water levels remain higher than these breathing holes for an extended period of time that the alders weaken sufficiently for their roots to fall victim to aggressive fungi. That's the end of chapter 13. Next time we'll pick up in chapter 14. Tree or not tree?